I'm okay to do that. D Love with a super chat, Johnny Mac. He's going right to my line of thought. Would it be a good idea to trade Slay for maybe a wide receiver and play the young guys at cornerback? I think this is a fair question. Let's go to a comment from Mike Fitter. I want to welcome everybody in today. We have a full hour and 20 to play. We'll have Martin Frank in hour number 2, who asked the question that everybody's been talking about, the Jalen Hurts. So we'll talk to Martin Frank in hour number 2. But in hour number 1, Johnny Mac and I have a good hour and 20 minutes to talk. So if you guys have any good comments, not dumb stuff, if you guys have any good comments, good questions for us, I will definitely field some of your comments and some of your questions. Mike says, I think he'll have tight ends and AJ lining up in different spots. I have seen a lot of commentary on that, Johnny Mac. You think that's something Kellen Moore will do?
Well, he's always played all three. He's played X, he's played Z, he's played flex. And so is Devontae. So, how much does it change? A lot of that is going to change. Can they find a competent third receiver? Can they find a competent slot receiver? Is that Paris Campbell, or is it somebody else? If they do, not as much as you're speculating. If they don't, probably a little bit more, because they'll want to take advantage of some matchups in the slot, in theory. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing from that perspective. Like, I don't want AJ playing in the slot a ton. I think that's a waste of one of the best 5 receivers in football. So
but what if you can get, I agree here, because it's like he's a mismatch on any cornerback in the league. Doesn't matter who they are. What if you can get him lined up against a safety?
Well, yeah, if you can. That's the whole thing about matchups. But most teams are pretty.
Yeah,
most teams are not going to. Most teams are not going to lose track of AJ Brown. So and say, oh, hey, we got fooled. The safeties on AJ Brown. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, because teams make mistakes all the time. But if that happens, that is a bad mistake by the defense. Where no matter where he lines up, including the backfield. If you want to put him in the backfield, a lot of people, Eagles have done it occasionally with Devontae Smith, where you try to hide him in the backfield and try to create a matchup, a mismatch that way. That's a blown identification from the defense if it happens, and it's possible it happens. And remember, you're talking about situations, and that wins games. So if it's a big spot and you can manipulate them from the slot to get a good matchup, and it wins you a game by converting a first down, or that, it's huge. But I think when people say that, and I might be wrong, and the commenter can clarify, I think he's talking about volume, and I don't think it's about volume. From a volume perspective, you don't want AJ Brown in the slot a ton. You want to find a slot receiver. That's the goal of the Eagles. Can you take advantage of it in a big situation and try to manipulate it that way? Sure. But I think those are 2 different conversations.
I think this is what a lot of people point to. He said that's how Lamb racked up yards. A lot of people do see that in Dallas, and Lamb's in that slot a lot.
Yeah, well, he's a slot. I mean, they use him as a slot.
Yeah, well, they're not going to pay him like a slot receiver. That's for sure.
No, but I mean, again, AJ's proven himself as an outside receiver. There's no difficulty getting the football outside. And they're different types of receivers. AJ's a giant, traditional. If you've seen him, if you've seen his pictures on Instagram, he ain't CD Lamb. He is a big X receiver that can do a lot of different things. You are doing him a disservice if you play him in the slot, and that's what he said. So he's talking about volume, because CD does it a lot.
Yeah, it's volume for sure.
Justin Jefferson does it a lot. Those guys are different types of receivers. and they can do both. They're both great, and AJ can do it, and he's great. But they're not the same types of players. If you want that, it would be more Devontae than AJ.
Yeah, because Devontae fits the mold, at least looks more of the part physically, closer to CeeDee Lamb, closer to Justin Jefferson. Like
the best case is to find a slot receiver. That's the best case.
You think they're going to do it? You think they're going to go outside the locker room and bring somebody in?
Yeah. They have to get better.
I don't really think they're gonna, to be honest.
It's funny. Everybody's putting out their post mini camp 53, and everybody's got 6 receivers. And I'd probably put 6 receivers on there myself at this stage. But I'm like, that's one of the weakest positions they got after AJ and Devontae. What are you carrying so many receivers? And most people have Paris and Britton Covey, and Britton's going to make the team as obviously the punt returner, and then the 2 rookies, Johnny Wilson, Anaya Smith. And I'm like, Anaya Smith hasn't caught the football at all. You can't get him on the practice squad. Johnny Wilson, you can't get him on the practice squad. And if they do get picked up on waivers, all right. Didn't work out. Now, I agree with all those people that the Eagles are going to keep him on the 53 because that's just the modern GM. They hate cutting draft picks. But those guys aren't ready to play.
I just wonder. They came in with Zach Pascal 2 years ago, Olamide Zaccheaus last year, and Quez Watkins.
And those are not meaningful. That's what Paris.
That's what I mean. Like, they went into the season with those guys. The last 2 years they had AJ and Devontae. I think they might just feel okay with Paris Campbell. You don't have to like it, but I think the Eagles might not be as worried about that.
Yeah, I'm hoping John Ross can shake the rust.
Do you think John Ross would be the slot guy, or would he be the backup on the outside?
Well, you could do both.
You can do both, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's a long shot. I'm not trying to, but you can see his talent in as Howie would say, the twitch in his body. It's just different. And obviously it didn't work out in Cincinnati, but you could see just the framework of why he was a top 10 pick. He's still young, so he's still got that athleticism. And it's a very long shot. But, I mean, he signed late, and he was getting first-team reps by the end of minicamp. So that tells you how quickly it was progressing. I wouldn't bet on it, but, I think Paris Campbell is what you just said, more of a Olamide Zaccheaus type than a Zach Pascal type. But overall, just, he's an NFL player, but it's not going to be splashy. But I always thought there's only one football. I don't know if they have a split. It's not like, people brought up Hunter Renfrow, and, he's not the same player when he had 100 receptions, but even if he was, he wouldn't be on the open market, number one. But from the standpoint of, would you really want him throwing the football to a great slot receiver 100 times when you have all their other playmakers?
Yeah.
So again, be
30
careful
to 40 catch type of guy, probably.
Yeah. So I don't know. But
what Mike brings up Britton Covey in the chat. I think he'd be great in the slot. They don't
I wish they'd give Britton a chance, but they're not going to. It's evident. He's got tremendous he's got, when you think of the slot receivers that people tend to think of, Wes Welkers, the Julian Edelmans, those types. He's got that type of short area quickness to win on option routes, but he's so small. I just don't think the Eagles see him as an offensive player. And I think they should give him a chance. And I think if they gave him a chance, he'd win the job, at least for the guys here. But I don't talk about him that much because I don't think they see him that way.
We spoke a little bit about AJ Brown. I wanted to bring up this article I saw from Tim McManus over on ESPN. Anybody that's listening to the show right now, I recommend going and reading in the article when the show is over. It's if you're an Eagle fan and you're an AJ Brown guy, it's interesting to get a look. Tim talked to AJ's trainer in Florida. The guy, I think he's the head athletic trainer at FAU. I can't think of his name right now. Joey Garasio. And just talked about how AJ's off-season workout regimen right now and how locked in he is from a physical perspective and nutritionally. He's down to 7% body fat. Worked on that knee where he had the knee problem going into the playoff game last year. So really good article. I have high expectations for AJ Brown this year. He seems to be really doing all the right things off the field. Let's go to James Carver. First super chat of the day. Thank you, James Carver, 1999. We appreciate it, brother. J-Mac, are official people like you informed by teams on things like RPOs, checks actually existing, et cetera? Because an immediate outside DB read from RPO will become pass, and people don't count RPO unless a later DB reads because it's obvious. Any response to James Carver there, John?
No, we don't, and nobody has that. And coaches hold on to that, and that's why I brought up Chip. Would often bring up, what you think is an RPO isn't necessarily an RPO. And it was in Chip's case, he was kind of ludicrous, especially during the Sam Bradford, Nick Foles era, when everybody knew they weren't going to hold it and run the football. But anyway, he used to talk about it all the time. So no, there is no official scoring system because no coaches are not going to come out and say this, that, this, and go through every play and say it's just not possible. So the people that do it, like PFF, they do the best job possible, but it's never going to be 100% accurate. And yeah, the Eagles even say there's an extra pass option because of Jalen Hurts' ability. So they say, run pass option. Because of Jalen's ability to extend the play. So all of this factors into it. But the biggest part to me, and the thing that's most important, is the conflict it creates in the defenders. And are you able to take advantage of that? That's the goal of the RPO. And you got to read it right from the quarterback's perspective. And you got to execute it, which again is that word that it's not an excuse, but that's the reality of every NFL play. It's easy to say it, but then you got to go out and execute it. And that's the bigger part of it.
He's a good follow-up from James. I mean, and I trust there were checks in offense, even though people didn't always see them. I think that's definite, James. I mean,
oh yeah. I mean, well, you look at the Seattle play. We had no idea.
Yeah.
How would we possibly know? How would anyone possibly know? Forget about educated media members or educated fans. We have no idea that they're checking from what they're supposed to run, and still to this day we don't know what they were supposed to run. But that's where you put the trust in your quarterback, and he's got to make the right decision on the field. That's why a lot of the criticism that goes to the coaching staff is ill warranted from another perspective. Now, again, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation, because coaches often make wrong decisions. That's not what I'm trying to say. But the assumption of, and we heard this a million times, the assumption of, well, the Eagles have no answers for the blitz. The coaches are not giving Jalen Hurts answers for the blitz. Aren't they? They might. And he might not be utilizing them correctly. He might not be on the same page with AJ or Devontae as far as sight adjustments, as far as picking up what the defense is going to do, as far as making sure it's called correctly, and you default to the bubble screen. Is that the coach's fault or the quarterback's fault? I wish I could tell you. I'll tell you this. I hope it's the quarterback's fault, because then it really is bad. and I don't think it is that bad. I think there were answers, hot routes, or again, you can go to a high school game and you're going to see hot routes in an offense. Um, so to assume NFL coaches can't do that is kind of ludicrous, but I say it all the time. Fans generally don't want to blame star players for things that go wrong.
We got some good topics for segment number 2, but I want to hit a couple more chats. We've got some good questions from the guys in the chat right now, Johnny Mac. They like getting the responses from you. So let's keep going on them. Matt Gene Giles joined. Xander, John, how do you guys feel about Hurts being under center more during play action? I guess we don't know if that's really going to be how it works. We'll see when the offense comes. But Johnny Mac, if he did do that, what would you think of it?
I wouldn't love it.
I wouldn't
That's
love
not
it
what
either.
he is. And again,
Right.
the RPO is the same thing as play, a traditional. We talked about that in the opening. Traditional play action, which is Justin Herbert,
Yeah.
back to the defense. Good bait. Aaron Rodgers, the best ball faker of all time, putting it in the stomach, pulling it out. Maybe you got the linebacker stepping up. Maybe you got the DBs with the false step, and bang, you got a big play down the field. That's what he's talking about. I don't think that's the strength of Jalen Hurts. I don't want to change him. Can you do it a little bit more? Sure. But again, if you're talking about volume, I don't think it'd be a good thing. Their RPO, their play action is the RPO game. Again, same thing. Create conflict with the defender. And that's what they do best. And that's when the change was first met with this construed, we're going to mesh the offenses together.
Yeah.
I didn't like that, but that's one thing the Eagles did well. And my presumption is if Kellen Moore's a good offensive coordinator, as most people think he is, he's going to realize that's what Jalen does best, and he's going to put that in the offense. So it takes care of itself. But yeah, if you want to turn him into Kirk Cousins or a Kyle Shanahan quarterback, good luck with that. I don't think that's the best utilization of Jalen Hurts. Now, can he improve a little bit on these individual things? Sure. But
yeah, to turn the offense into that would be counterproductive, I think.
Yeah, that's what I think.
I just have a fear, though, that there's this train of thought where you're so locked in on what the traditional steps of a quarterback should be and the traditional progression of a quarterback when he gets to the NFL. Are they going to continue to force feed that and expect Jalen to become that one day? I don't know. I just wonder where it's like every quarterback you have, okay, they take time to learn, they take time to read the defenses, and then these things are the next part of their progression. Well, it's not really with a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, but I wonder if they do try and force that into his game, namely like a play action like that.
Yeah, I hope not. And again, there's a difference between, does he need to improve? Yes. But again, if you're talking about volume, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with changing him as a quarterback. I don't think that's the proper way to go. Now, do you want him to improve on certain things? And that's one of them. You want to be able to get him a little bit more comfortable under center. Basically, the only time he's under center has been, tush push times. So yeah, but does he need to be under center a ton? I think that's counterproductive. Yeah, I don't get that mentality. So a little bit, yes. It's like wise man avoids all extremes. Should you be last in the NFL in utilizing pre-snap motion? No.
Right.
Should you be first in the NFL? No. But you probably don't want to be bottom 5 as anything, which comes directly from the head coach. Big Fangio and the blitz, that's going to be a big talk because it's always a big talk. And, Seth's going to talk about it. Everybody's going to talk about it. They don't blitz. They don't blitz because it's going to be 21, 22%. That's going to be his blitz percentage. He's been around a while. You can check
At least
this
we have a
out.
coordinator now that will own that. I love that about Vic. Like, I don't care what you're
Yeah.
going to say. I'm going to do what
His
I want to do.
whole philosophy, I get frustrated because I was explaining this to a fellow media member who's saying, well, Devin White can blitz because he's got a bunch of sacks.
Yeah.
And again, you're looking at a piece of paper with a number on it. You know, Big man, look at the other piece of paper, which is a far larger sample size of Big Fangio's blitz percentages. He's going to blitz in the low 20%. That's not to say he can't rush. Now, what Vic does well, if Devin White can rush the passer, and he can, that's one of the strengths of him as a linebacker. He'll utilize it at certain specific times if he even wins the starting job. Which we got to get there first. But the assumption is he's going to win a starting job. And, you know, typically if he rushes him, he's going to drop somebody else. So a blitz is 5. A blitz is +1. So a blitz isn't Devin White coming if Josh Sweat drops. That's not a blitz. So that's number one. But the second part of that aspect is his whole defensive philosophy is about the +1 and the +1 being in coverage as much as humanly possible. So yeah, he's not going to blitz a lot. Get used to that. And he just doesn't believe in it. And you're more likely to see 8-man coverages, put +2 in coverage. Especially if these young defensive backs start to really hit the ground running. But anyway, that was a tangent.
Well, let's go defense now. We took a bunch of questions on offense. Messiah Armstrong's in here. Good morning, guys. Do you see this defense being well improved or taking a lot of bumps before they mature? Tough to say. I mean, I think they're going to be what? Can I answer both? I think they're going to be improved.
It is. That's the right answer. Yes, they're going to be improved, and they're going to have a bunch of hiccups. Yeah. I mean, all young players go through that. And they're going to be very young in the secondary. But yeah, I mean, I said the day Vic got here, it's going to be competent.
I do think they lost. I think they lost more talent on defense than they gained. Now, I think Vic Fangio covers that gap and then some. But you did lose Fletcher Cox and Hassan Reddick. Now, I think they're positioned okay. They obviously went and signed Bryce Huff to replace that Hassan Reddick role. They have Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, who are going to step up, take bigger roles this year with no Fletcher Cox. But I see where there could be pause about, I mean, you added Gardner Johnson and stuff like that. So I get it. But I think there's reason for pause, though, when you think about the losses on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. I mean, Fletcher's a big deal. It's, Chris Long, was on some kind of podcast talking about, his selflessness as a player and the fact that he enabled people to do other things. And I think that's underrated. Jim Swartz would always talk about being disciplined, and sometimes it's hard to get stars to be disciplined on the defensive side of the ball. That was one of the criticism of the defensive front late last season. So I do think he's going to be a bigger loss than maybe people realize, because he wasn't the player he once was towards the end of his career. And obviously Hassan, I mean, say what you want about Hassan. I get why the Eagles did what they did, but he's productive. I mean, there aren't too many other edge rushers in this league that can match his production. So you can't just assume Bryce Huff is going to replace that production. But I will say, from a smaller sample size, and it's more than 1 year too, he's been a consistent pressure producer. So I get why the Eagles are evaluating him of taking that next step. And if he does, I think everything's going to be fine. But it's a big if. It's definitely a big if.
One more question, and then we'll go to a break. Our man Cody, let me find it. Cody K, who's always in here giving us the support. So we appreciate you, Cody K. Johnny Mac, this has come up a lot. Do you think Justin Simmons comes to Philly to help with safety depth? If not Justin Simmons, insert name. I hear a lot of people in the chat and on this show, on the afternoon show, talking about they want a more aggressive safety, a physical safety, a guy that can tackle. Fans not sold on Reed Blankenship like you are, Johnny Mac.
No. I know everybody wants. I mean, Justin's one of those guys who I assume doesn't want to deal with off-season
Stuff,
work.
right?
Because it's just weird that he's still out there, and that I get the history with Vic Fangio, but yeah, I don't think it's coming. I think the Eagles. I think if they didn't have CJ, if they didn't get CJ back, I think, maybe somebody like Justin would be here. But they made their decision about that particular safety spot, and it's going to be CJ, and Reed's going to be the other one. And I keep saying Sidney's going to be back. Don't forget about Sidney Brown. He's going to be back, if not for week 1, very, very early in the season. And the Eagles still like him a lot. And I think they should. You saw some of his athleticism. So I've said it pretty consistently. I don't think safety is as big as a need as most people do. I think there's far bigger needs: linebacker, backup wide receiver, even backup defensive tackle. Because you also have the versatile nature of Avonte Maddox. You got the versatile nature of Cooper DeJean, which could eventually encompass some safety work. And even somebody like Tyler Hall played safety as well as nickel with Las Vegas.
He's a name, John, that keeps getting brought up. Tyler Hall. He's like a sleeper on this team, I think.
He's another guy. All the DBs played so well in the spring. All the young, except Eli. Poor Eli didn't have a great spring. But Quinyon, Cooper, Kaylee Ringo, Isaiah Rogers, Tyler Hall, they all were really good. And he's got some versatility as well. So I think that backup, I think that's the part that people miss. They have so many versatile players that can play in the pinch. Now, if CJ gets hurt early in training camp and Justin Simmons is still out there, then I'd say, yeah, go get him. But if you're bringing him in, you're bringing him in to be a starter. And I just think the Eagles believe in Reed Blankenship. And there's a little redundancy to CJ Gardner-Johnson and Justin Simmons. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Reed Blanket, people bring it up in the chat. Reed can hit. He can tackle. He is physical. So I do agree with that. Maybe some people aren't giving him enough credit. Maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. I'm okay to do that. D Love with a super chat, Johnny Mac. He's going right to my line of thought. Would it be a good idea to trade Slay for maybe a wide receiver and play the young guys at cornerback? I think this is a fair question. Now, I don't think they're going to do it, but I certainly think it's a fair question and a fair thought. I mean, if you think about the depth at this cornerback room, even if, and I know we're still speculating, it's only spring, but if some of these young corners that we're talking about, Isaiah and Keeley, and then you have Quinyon and Cooper, the depth at corner, and this might be the deepest the cornerback room has ever been in Philly. I mean, I know they had some good teams in the early 2000s on the corner, but depth like this is pretty crazy depth right now, considering James and Slay are still here. What are your thoughts? What are your final thoughts on this, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. They moved the trade deadline back to after week 9. So they moved it back a week from where it typically is. And I think if you're having a bad season, that's when it potentially could be a way to go. There, you obviously you don't want that if you're having a bad season, and I can't imagine this team being out of it by week 9, even if they struggle early. They're not going to be out of anything. So yeah, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. I think it's very, very unlikely. Right now, I mean, certainly no. Emphatic no right now. They consider themselves a Super Bowl contender. And for all the youth and just what you talked about, the depth, and it's all projected. Quinyon Mitchell's a rookie. Cooper DeJean's a rookie. Isaiah Rodgers has been off for 500 days and looked good in shorts and pajamas, as Bobby King parlance.
Yeah.
Kaylee Ringo, I have tremendous um, optimism on, because AJ Brown has tremendous optimism, but that's what it is, optimism. So no, emphatic no right now. Come back to me at the trade deadline, but if it's in the question, in the mix at the trade deadline, that's a bad thing as well.
Well, I know you don't think it's going to happen. Can I get you to say whether you would, let's just say you're the GM of the football team. Would you entertain this thought?
No, right now, no. They Slay's their best corner, and they're a Super Bowl contender. I don't know if I'm going that far. I don't know if, but I mean, I guess from a standpoint of who are the legit Super Bowl contenders in the NFC.
Well, hold
you
that.
always
We're going to
throw,
do that next segment. We're going to do our
yeah,
top
well,
7 rosters. So,
and I don't have the Eagles at the top of that list. So, but I do think the teams ahead of them are not so far ahead of them that if everything goes right, that they couldn't catch them. So, no, if I were the GM, I would not be even entertaining trading Slay at this point.
well, the only thing I think that could be a fair thought would be potentially, it's potential, it's not guaranteed, that the young guys might play better than Slay at the start of the year. I mean, Slay is 33 years old. Like, eventually Father Time is going to hit him. I'm not saying it might not hit him this year, but eventually that's going to come, and that's going to do it. So we'll see. We'll see. But I do think from that perspective, that could, change it.
Well, I don't know how you're going to prove to Vic Fangio that, what are we talking about? Week 2, week 3? I don't think Vic is going to be given out, to use a Jim Swartz, again, go back to Jim, gold stars after 2 weeks. So even if Quinyon Mitchell plays really well for 2 weeks and insert other name of other cornerback plays really well in practice, because he won't be on the field that much. I don't think he's going to be banging on Howie's door saying, I got to get this guy on the field through 2 weeks. So where does that happen? Again, the trade deadline's denied. The second part of it, who's going to trade for him 2 weeks in? I mean, maybe at the trade deadline. So that's week 9, after week 9. And then the last part is, you're not going to get anything for him because he's 33 and he makes so much money. So what's the point?
I guess other than ripping the Band-Aid off to eat some of those startup costs with the young guys, there's really no point.
The only reason you would do it is because you so desperately wanted one of those young cornerbacks on the field. And I just don't see a path to that situation with this team. If it were a rebuilding team, I'd be the exact opposite. If we were saying this team's going to win 7 games, play the young guys, get the startup costs out of the way.
Right. All right, let's go to our first commercial break. That was pretty good. I honestly like getting some good questions like that. So I appreciate everybody in the chat. Thank you guys for being here. Really good questions, a lot of you guys, and there's more I missed, but we just don't have the time, so I can't get to them all. But I do appreciate you leaving all your thoughts in the comments. Mike and Dank, Ian, BMO, James Carver, Suplex City, so Wayne Miller. We appreciate all you guys. Make sure you drop a like on the show. I think we're already up almost 50 likes. So let's get to 100 likes during the live show. We're going to take a commercial break. We have Martin Frank in hour 2. But after the break, we're going to do our top 7 NFC rosters. So we'll see what Johnny Mack is thinking on who's going to be the top rosters in the NFC this year. I gave my top list the other day on the afternoon show with Dan Cilio, but I left the team off, and I had a blatant miss. So I'm going to correct that, and we'll do that all next on Birds 365, everybody. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.